Returning now to our top story, Donald Trump's royal visit and Europe's fight to win over Washington. Joining me is Sir Robin Niblett, Distinguished Fellow at Chatham House. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good to be with you.
Likewise, Trump's second state visit. Let's be clear, is this simply pomp and ceremony or a diplomatic win that warms Washington's ties with the UK and by extension Europe?
That's a big question. I would say this is an important meeting in a chain of meetings that collectively are making sure that the transatlantic relationship, not just the UK-US relationship, the whole transatlantic relationship remains solid enough to see us through these very perilous times. You know, the meeting itself is important, as I said, because of where it fits in the sequence. From the meeting in the White House that other European leaders were collectively involved with as well, through to, with President Zelensky that took place back in August, through to the future meetings that will be taking place at the UN General Assembly. Each of these moments is a moment where things must not go wrong, and where the two sides need to keep making, at the very least, making sure things hang together on Ukraine especially, but do not go backwards, because we all know at any moment things could turn bad. So all I can tell you is in London, everyone is breathing a large sigh of relief that the meeting got off successfully and there are no nasty surprises.
Do you view this state visit, a historic second state visit, as only happening because of the tenuous transatlantic ties that Europe currently face?
I think the second state visit has happened because keeping Donald Trump on side is uniquely important right now at a time when Europe in particular, UK included, face some of the most difficult challenges they faced in decades. Now, President Trump, is not having two terms sequentially. There's been a 4-year gap between them. So that provides a certain amount of, you might say, cover for having a second visit. It is two different monarchs. And of course, President Trump will be able to say that he is the only president, in modern times, to have met two different monarchs, Queen Elizabeth the last time and King Charles this time. So, the reason it took place, the reason the invitation was extended, as we'll remember when Prime Minister Starmer visited President Trump in the White House all of that time ago and gave that letter from King Charles, was to make sure that the relationship would hang together, given how many differences we had at that time. It's hard to remember, but in those days, President Trump was saying that, President Zelensky was responsible for the war. We had threats of 30-40% tariffs being imposed on European countries. When you think of where we are today, we are in a better place. So I think the reason for this visit is quite logical.
You mentioned keeping Trump happy. Some say Europe will need to flatter Trump for as long as is necessary, even if it doesn't want to. Are we in an era of European leaders, of Brussels, of London, either biting their tongue or scrambling to the whim of this president?
It'll look like both those things are going on, biting tongue. Certainly there's some moments in the press conference today where Keir Starmer had to bite his tongue, on wind farms, President Trump was calling them the most useless, forms of energy, way expensive. These things are not true. Prime Minister Starmer bit his tongue. But the way I think of it is that Starmer and other European leaders are buying time. Europe has to buy time. We are not strong enough, which is amazing, collectively to be able to confront Russia, certainly over Ukraine right now. We are not strong enough to be able to compete in the new high technology industries of AI against China or America. So lots of tough decisions are having to be taken in London, in Paris, in Berlin, in Warsaw, throughout Europe. And while those tough decisions are being taken, we cannot afford to have at the same time a fight with the United States. So as we develop air defense capabilities, as we develop drone defense capabilities, as we start to invest in our own digital technology capabilities, during all of that buying time, we need to make sure that the relationship with the United States stays strong. And the fact of the matter is that the differences between President Trump and just about every European leader in power today are profound and serious. But you wouldn't have guessed that from the last 2 days here in the UK.
A fair point. And that brings me to President Trump pushing NATO and EU countries to move first, for example, on Russian oil before he slams those extra sanctions on Moscow. Is he playing for time? And can Europe actually trust him to act?
Well, actually, I think that's a good way of putting it. I don't know if he's playing for time. I think President Trump, we know he doesn't believe in sanctions. He thinks, economics is about making money, not about trying to deprive yourself from the capacity of making money. I think he also believes that the Biden administration's use of sanctions kind of actually weakened the role of the dollar, has encouraged countries, China, Russia, but other emerging markets, Brazil, Indonesia, to try to find ways around the dollar and not to use the dollar. So he doesn't believe in sanctions. Secondly, he knows that actually the only countries that really have clout when it comes to sanctions with Russia are actually European countries. We're the ones that have traditionally imported most of the oil and gas from from Russia. We're the ones who had the bigger trading relationships. The idea that the United States would impose secondary sanctions on China as well as on India for buying Russian oil, when the countries that are most threatened by the continuation of this war against Ukraine are European countries. And the idea that we in Europe would not do this, that we would not impose 100% or whatever tariffs on China and on India at the same time, to be frank, is illogical. So I think he's quite fair to throw it back in our lap. The fact of the matter is, Trump, wants to complete a trade deal with Xi Jinping. As you know, there is possibly going to be a phone call between President Xi and President Trump tomorrow. They're trying to sort out TikTok. They're trying to sort out what semiconductors could be sold by NVIDIA to China. They're trying to work out what tariff rate China will find as part of the reciprocal tariff arrangements that President Trump is imposing on all America's trade partners. It is a very sensitive moment for one of the most important bilateral trade relationships in the world, US and China. And Trump is not going to jeopardize that on behalf of helping Europeans win their war against Russia. I think it's as plain as that. So, yeah, he's throwing it back at us. And my view is I think European governments, including the UK, are not going to impose secondary tariffs on India. We're trying to do a trade deal with India. We're not going to impose secondary tariffs on China because our trading relationship and our technology relationship and our energy relationship is too important. So, yeah, I think he has checkmated us on trying to get America to apply more economic pressure on Russia. And we're not going to do it, and he's not going to do it.
You rightly raise India and China. The European Union, as you mentioned there, the UK, also trying to keep those relationships warm. For example, the likes of India this week looking to explore deeper ties. Obviously, China, despite both of those countries' ties with Russia. What do you make of that? And is the Trump effect actually driving these transatlantic partners in terms of Europe to find friends elsewhere?
If I go back to what I said earlier, Europe has to buy time right now. So it certainly must not look like it is trying to play the United States off for individual advantage. So, one of the tough questions that Keir Starmer did not get, as far as I could see at that press conference today, was whether we in Britain, the Starmer government, would approve the site of the new Chinese embassy, which is supposed to be in a very prominent site near the Tower of London. It would make it the largest Chinese embassy in Europe. It's in the old Royal Mint where we used to make our pounds, and currency, if you see what I'm saying. And there's a lot of opposition to it here in the United Kingdom. There's also been a lot of questions about the wisdom of doing this in America. Now, Prime Minister Starmer does not want to lose access to the Chinese market. He would like more Chinese investment in the United Kingdom in non-sensitive areas, not in telecoms, not in semiconductors, but he would like them in other sectors of the British economy, including in our renewable energy. So, we want to be able to have flexibility to improve our trading relationship with Trump, get one of the best deals we possibly can. We're haven't completely sorted that out yet. I can talk about some of the details if you want. But at the same time, Britain is trying to keep a functional economic relationship going with China. At the moment, that seems to be the same as what Donald Trump is doing. So I think both sides, the Trump administration and the Starmer government, has decided not to talk about the China threat, just move it off stage, if I can put it that way. So we're not trying to get advantage over America in our relationship with China. The Trump administration, at least, is also trying to get an effective relationship going with China, because they've learnt that without Chinese processed rare earth minerals, a lot of American investment coming into America is not going to be effective, whether it's defense investments, because of the rare earth components in Lockheed Martin, in fighter jets, in radar, in guidance systems. That's a real clout, a real stick that the Chinese administration has been able to hold over America. So my sense at the moment is the British government, European governments, and America are trying to dial down the anti-China rhetoric that we saw at the beginning of this administration.
Now, we're unfortunately running out of time, but one last question. After Russia launched its full-scale invasion in 2022, you wrote on social media about Ukraine that we must not forget or let them down. Is the West, through Trump's talking, the hot and cold with Putin, the back and forth with Europe and NATO, letting Ukraine down?
I don't think we're letting Ukraine down completely. So obviously I'm picking my words carefully here. It is notable that European governments, UK included, have made up in the first 6 months of the year. We have provided collectively as Europeans the same amount of money which has been targeted on helping Ukraine with defense purchases to defend themselves and financial assistance to cover their budget costs. Europe alone has paid the same amount as America and Europe did last year. So that is an important contribution. I'm proud of European governments for having stepped up and protected Ukraine. I personally believe that we should not be holding the idea of putting some military force on the ground to help with training, to help with logistics. We should not be holding that hostage to a ceasefire, because that gives President Putin control over the negotiating process. So I would like us to see us do more. I'd like to see the EU advancing the membership negotiations faster, making real progress. I'd like to see British government leading the way with some other coalition of the willing and making some real military contributions to Ukraine's protection, not to attack Russia, to protect Ukraine now, not waiting for a ceasefire. Then we will be truly helping them.
Sir Robin Niblett, Distinguished Fellow at Chatham House, thank you again for your time. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And that's all for World News tonight. But don't go anywhere. On the Record with Adam Yasser is next. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.